All right. Okay, welcome everybody. Good evening. And thanks for our third installment of the Winter Wellness Virtual Chats. I'm Louise Taylor, physiotherapist and co-owner at Movement Sports Clinic with my physiotherapist partner, Tyson Plesak. And our goal with these virtual sessions has been to provide relevant and topical information from reliable and local Calgary sources. It's been a most enjoyable journey these last few weeks, a really rewarding experience to host the great team that we've had. And so that's been really fun to do. And we've had some really excellent presenters over the last 3 weeks. So hopefully with this series, we've provided some tools to encourage a really positive health journey this winter. We know it's going to be challenging, but remember it's important to address all the elements of wellness, the mental, the physical, the spirit, and our emotions. So we've been touching a little bit on all those things over the last few weeks, and we will carry on with that today. Over the last couple of weeks, our speakers have shared some really good ideas about exercising outdoors, relaxing our bodies, what we should eat, how we should get to sleep. Our first session was on cold and the immune system, and last week was winter and staying active outdoors. And this week we're addressing ice and isolation. So with the holiday season coming and the winter with social distancing going to be probably lasting with us for a while, it's sure to present some challenges for us all. So the more we can be prepared with some strategies, the more safely we'll get through the darkness of winter and onto the light of next spring. So Lucia Mathieson is a pelvic health physiotherapist, and she'll be covering the topic of hormones and our mood tonight. And running coach Melissa Paauwe will be helping us find some motivation to get outside and exercise in the winter months. And Kristy Garnet, empowerment mentor and clinical herbalist, will guide us through being mindful and nurturing our spirit. So just a little bit of housekeeping is make sure you have a cup of tea poured. All these conversations are recorded and will be posted on our website. The last two are there already, along with some resources if you want to recap of what you've heard. And then please put comments in the chat box. And just to get everyone started today in the chat box, we wanted to have a sense, just when talking about hormones and mood, of kind of the age group of people joining us. So if you could pop in, you don't have to put your age, but maybe the decade into the chat, so we could just have a sense of who's joining us and what age group we're talking about. So if you can do that, we'll also monitor any questions into the chat as we go, so we can address questions as we go. Each speaker will have about 10 minutes or a little longer, see how it goes, to present. And at the end of each of those sessions, we'll address some of the questions. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for maybe a bit of Q&A amongst all the presenters, and then some final thoughts. And at the end, we will stop the recording, but we will be going through a body scan and a visualization, so that if you want to stay a little longer than the hour, to get another tool in your toolbox to help the mindfulness piece. So we'll just get started with speakers, and our first one will be Lucia. So she's a pelvic health and orthopedic physiotherapist and one of my colleagues at Movement Sports Clinic, and she loves running, and I think she really likes getting outside, is particularly dragging her family with her, and she's going to speak to us about hormones and mood. So, Lucia, did you get a sense of the age group?
Yes, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for sharing their age. This is great. And yeah, let's get into it, because there is a lot to talk about. And I'm sorry for my little bit very white voice. Yeah, there we go. So, there, perfect. Okay, so thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm the pelvic health physiotherapist, so I deal with the woman's health, about the muscles and the soft tissue that we have inside our pelvis. We have done quite a bit of kind of the pelvic floor anatomy and the dysfunctions in the 2 previous webinars, so I will completely leave it out kind of today, and we'll just kind of go through the hormones and through kind of the stages in the life and what kind of happens to us. So again, if you need a little bit kind of pelvic floor review, just join or kind of re-listen our first and second webinar that's on our website, the Movement Sports Clinic. And here we go. I thought might as well, let's kind of dive into it and right away go into the menstruation, because that happens to every female. And there's this really interesting things that the hormones do to our body. So menstruation, let's say on the average by textbook, 28-day cycle, really characterized by the presence of estrogen and progesterone. And it's basically kind of, as you can kind of see it on a graph, there's basically kind of two things happening. So your day one would be the first day of your period, of your bleeding. And the hormones are fairly low, and then they kind of slowly start to spike. There's a little bit of a decrease at the ovulation. And then you have a kind of a second wave where both of the hormones are quite spiking. So just based on the graph, we can basically, you can, and it will be interesting if you guys can see yourself in it. Your month could be divided in kind of a low hormonal phase and a high hormonal phase. And in the low hormonal phase basically starts from the first day of your period. And this first 14 days, this is your time to get out and do things. Because just kind of preparing yesterday's, I was reading a couple of the books. So supposedly the first 14 days of your cycle, which you basically probably going to bleed the first 5 on the average, and the rest kind of leads up towards the ovulation. This is the stage where you're going to be the most similar to men. So what does it mean? It means that your mood and your energy going to be the most stable and the most balanced, because the both hormones are fairly low. This is a great time to strength train, because your body can process proteins really well and can really build muscle mass really well. This is a stage where you're going to feel really quite a bit less of a pain in your recovery. It's going to be quite good. So kind of knowing this after your period, this is the time, to hit the gym, you can hike 2 days in a row, you can ski 2 days in a row, because your body's going to be able to take that, not abuse, but kind of the activity level, and going to be able to recover from it really easy. And then slowly, as the ovulation is speaking, so you're kind of changing in another phase of the cycle. We call it the luteal phase. So at this point, the egg has been created by the ovaries and is being pushed into fallopian tube. And this is where the hormonal rage is going to start. We're going to have a higher level of estrogen and even higher level of progesterone. So at this stage, all these, both the combination of both of the hormones, it's going to really make it hard for you to create muscle. Both of the hormones have quite a bit of effect on kind of the production of the muscle mass. You're going to totally have a higher carb cravings. At the end of the day, you do have the menstruation, so we can get pregnant. So that's what the body physiologically is prepared for. It's preparing itself for pregnancy. Therefore, the carb cravings. Both of the hormones have a huge impact on the body fluid. Therefore, the bloating, because the body is retaining water. There's a little bit of increased core temperature, and there's a little bit of a increased sodium loss because of the sweating. And there was an interesting point that I found during this research to balance it out, or again, if you are being active during this kind of high phase, so after your ovulation, and again, the 14 days before your period. So for people who like to be quite active and kind of race, so it's been kind of noted that females 14 days before their cycle lose a lot of sodium. So you should supplement salt kind of in your liquids, or if you're racing in the time, especially for marathon runners and triathletes, they saw high numbers of people withdrawing from races because of the kind of a hyponatremia, a condition that withdraws the sodium from your body. But in the winter, this is the stage where your body craves the sodium. So chicken broth and those kind of liquidy hot soups can be a great recovery kind of a food kind of for you. With the bloating and with the water retention, again, that causes quite a bit of a GI issues. And this is where people might vary all the way from diarrhea to cramping to constipation, just due to the high presence of the hormones in our blood. And I think sometimes the hormones have direct effect on our brain and create all sorts of mood issues. And sometimes it's what the hormones are doing to us as a physical changes, and that affects our mood. So in the second cycle, it's more the fatigue and the bloating and the GI that basically affects kind of the moodiness, and you don't feel necessary as crazy to go to the gym. So maybe again, the 14 days before your period, this is the time to maybe not go for the longest of your run, but you can go for your easy runs and your easier hikes, and just for bike ride on a stationary bike. You don't have to be, climbing mountains and going for the peak activities. An interesting fact then, PMS, so the 5 to 7 days before period is when body is slowly getting ready for the period, so there is a huge activity of another hormonal group called the prostaglandins, and they're slowly starting the uterine contractions, and then they will end up basically kind of in a period. So this is really the most irritable time. You have already high estrogen, high progesterone, and then you have another group of hormones. So anytime there is too much or too low, that's where we really mentally, that whole too much up or too much down, that's what puts a lot of stress on our central nervous system. This is where lots of people describe kind of that rages and anger or too much crying or going from happy to cry. So I just kind of found a little advice to kind of balance these days with, or preparing for the period with, extra magnesium, extra omega-3s, and baby aspirin to decrease your cramping on your first 2 days of your period. So I thought that was interesting. So that is the menstruation. If you're lucky and if you are planning, then you will get pregnant. And I will talk about least this period because I think there is plenty of information. It is a time of your life where there is so much estrogen in your body and so much progesterone. It's to the level as if you would take 100 birth control pills per day. So tons of hormonal levels, again, tons of effect on many other systems in your body. But generally what the body is going for is, relaxation of your soft tissue. First of all, the changes starts in your uterus, so the nesting of the egg, creating blood vessels, creating nutrition to supporting the egg placenta. So there you go. There's so much activity in your body that your energy level is going to be significantly kind of suppressed. But then into the second and third trimester, still really highly encouraging 150 minutes of a moderate exercise per week. So getting more of the females who are too active, and then I'm getting the females who are too scared. So I'm always say, again, the happy medium. This is not a time to train for the best race of your life, but this is also not a time to stay healthy in a pregnancy, to lay on a couch. It's always good for you to move, to find a way, something that you enjoy and you like to do. Also a big thing in the prenatal time, because there is, again, too much of the hormones. Prenatal depression, not as much talked about, but quite a bit of prevalent in a pregnancy. And especially, again, adding sometimes to the high hormones, something like a stressful time. Talk about COVID, being a new mom, or, preparing yourself for being a new mom in the COVID times could quite a bit lead to the, stages of anxiety and depression. And definitely seek medical help. This is not something, you should be beating yourself up. This is not something that you should feel ashamed that you're crying and you go from, happy cry to rage. This is something that you need to talk to your healthcare professional to definitely help you out, because it's 9 months of pregnancy. It's a long time. And I will right away jump from the prenatal to the postpartum, where you have the opposite. Now you have low of the estrogen and low of the progesterone. So again, you're going from high to low. So anytime your bodies go through such a rapid changes, so right from the day one, right from the birth, the hormones change, and there can be significant effect on your mental health. And then you add that this is the time, of being physically depleted. This is the time of the sleep deficiency. Many, again, other hormones are adding to the act of estrogen and progesterone. So hormones that still has an effect on our joint laxity and a soft tissue. Anybody who is breastfeeding, it is usually described that this kind of effect of the laxity and soft tissue, more of the elasticity, is kind of getting prolonged by kind of 5 to 6 months. As soon as there is a high estrogen, you're never going to have a good libido. That always kind of suppresses it, and especially in a pregnancy, if there is breastfeeding happening, the body doesn't want the libido. It's almost like those two things don't mix. So again, take it easy on you. You don't have to be the crazy, sexy mom who handles the kids and who also handles the husband. Sometimes the balance never works. So it's all hormonal. So why does the mood swings happen quite a bit of a postpartum mom? And postpartum depression, it's quite a bit talked about. I feel like the baby blues are now quite well known. But again, what I see in my office is females many times saying, get it together. Why am I crying? Always the blame is on yourself. It's not yourself, it's hormones. Sometimes, again, cut yourself a little break, go talk to your doctor. Again, we are in a crazy stressful times, COVID, kids, having a family. There is definitely something that can shift your mental health in quite a bit of a different degree where it's not as easy to handle by yourself. The other interesting hormone in postpartum is the oxytocin, which is kind of the love hormone, and it's really responsible for creating that motherly bond between mom and the baby. But again, sometimes too much love and then too much uncertainty, something like a stressful time, COVID times, can, again, from love, you can go into quite a bit of high anxiety times. Another hormone group gets quite a bit shifted in a postpartum is thyroid hormones. Right at the birth, there could be spike, they could be kind of a down, kind of a shifts, and thyroid hormones have a huge impact on the mood. So again, don't beat yourself up. This is something that you should talk to your healthcare professionals, things that could be easily checked. Again, it's not a woman, it's not you, it's something that the hormones are causing your body to do. And just in the term of exercise, again, I always say take it easy for the 3 to 6 months, just because there's so many changes. We're not talking about like, okay, return to sport, how can I get myself stronger? We have to also discuss how can you sleep more? How can you strength train in such a limited hours of the day that you have? So take it easy for the first 3 to 6 months. The exercise can wait. You need to heal and recover first. And then let's go into the perimenopause and menopause. I will kind of talk about them both because at the end of the day, how it is described in the literature is perimenopause can be anything 5 to 10 years before menopause happen. And menopause by textbook would basically be your 12 months without the period and basically almost like a zero levels of estrogen being produced by your ovaries. There is a lot of changes that happen through our body, tons of physical changes, tons of psychological changes that really physically change our body and change our body composition. I do have females all the time in my office saying that I don't even know, I don't recognize myself. This have happened overnight. The biggest complaints would be the weight, the gaining the weight, losing the muscle despite having active females and they are exercising, the moods, the sleep inconsistencies, the sweats, and definitely vaginal changes. That's the reproductive system that's going to take the most of the change. With the zero estrogen, there's going to be a really huge change on your vaginal tissue. So with the decline of the estrogen, the biggest effect is on the metabolism. Your body is not going to be the same body. So you just trying to be hard on yourself and you just trying to be stricter with yourself, it's absolutely not going to work. If you're like going to try to follow the same diet or the same exercise, something needs to significantly change if you're experiencing these changes. There's a huge effect on the metabolism. There is complete change in the sensitivity for the carbohydrates. There's a complete shift to how we store sugar, what are we doing to fat. And in a menopause, we are not as able to store the sugar. There's way more sugar present in our blood. And therefore, it gets put more into the belly fat instead of the traditional way for females putting the storage of a fat into the hips and the thighs, for example. So it's a kind of a stage classified by we cannot maintain a good muscle mass. Therefore, you have no power. Therefore, you have no strength. Therefore, you are slowing down. That's why you're gaining weight, and this is going to have an effect on your quality of life. So let's kind of go into the metabolism a little bit. Again, I'm not a nutritionist by any change, but this is kind of what I got together with the research. There's a huge sensitivity to the carbs. The body responds completely different to the carbohydrates, especially to the fructose, which is the fruit sugar. Not being able to convert this kind of a simple sugar into an energy. It gets put into that belly fat kind of a storage. What the decrease of estrogen also does, it makes you resistant to insulin. So again, not able to get those sugars out of your bloodstreams. Too much sugar in your blood is gonna really cause lots of GI issues, bloating, upset stomach. If you have never had constipation, you're going to have constipation, maybe complete opposite into the diarrhea. So lots of GI changes. There's a hormone called the DHEA, which is kind of the precursor of estrogen. So again, that guy is not there because there is zero estrogen. And this hormone really helps us to limit or blocks the cortisol, so our response to stress. So now you have lots of cortisol in body. And again, you're already unhappy how your body is changing. So that's already creating another stressful situation that you're not going to be able to cope as well. So just as a simple kind of a food guidance, what I kind of found was definitely lower your carb intake. Use that lower glycemic items, so you're not spiking your sugar because then your body doesn't know what to do with it. Decrease the grains, decrease the breads, decrease the pastas, increase your fat intake. So you're not going to go for the sugar-free yogurt. You should go for lots of the fat-full yogurt. And also increase the non-animal kind of a protein as energy. There's lots of protein that should be taken in the menopause. Sleep. Every woman in menopause will tell me about their sleep. And again, sleep and energy go so together. So 60% of women do complain and report insomnia during menopause. That decrease of progesterone. So progesterone is kind of our anti-anxiety hormone. So as that is decreasing, we are having quite a bit more sleep disturbances. So we start to be way more sensitive to noises that we could sleep through before. We are more sensitive to potentially light in your room than before. Decrease of estrogen makes us spend less time in the REM sleep. So that is the quality sleep. That is the where you recover. That is the sleep that makes you wake up and you're ready to do another workout and have the energy to go into another day. So again, that's less. So you're going to be waking up and you're going to feeling so tired and exhausted. The only recommendation I found about this is just to stick with a good sleep routine and hygiene. So I just put a link. Have a listen to our seminar from the number one we did with Dr. Tubb. She talks about quite a good sleep hygiene. And there's a couple suggestions for alternative sleeping aids. The melatonin, I think that's the most common one. Tart cherry juice, they said if you drink a cup before going to sleep, half an hour, it's quite a bit of an anti-inflammatory. So that's going to maybe help settle down the gut, the sweats, and give you more comfortable sleep. The valerian root in a shape of a capsule or a tea has supposedly quite similarities to melatonin, so it gives you a better quality of sleep. And black cohosh, again, plant that can be fine as a capsule or a tea, helps quite a bit. Supposedly it's the most researched plant for hot flashes and asleep in a menopause. So I'm just going to leave it out there. And exercise. So this is the time where you need to power up. This is the time, women after 40, your cardio is not going to take it. You need to get into strengthening to make a meaningful changes in your body. You need to lift heavy. What does it mean? It means to mean you need to lift heavy and to the point that by the time you're doing the repetition number 7, 8, you are ready to drop the weight. So if you can keep going and you can do 15 and 20, you are not lifting heavy enough. Option, I know everybody's struggling for dumbbells and equipment. Go with the big body weight exercises, big push-ups to the point that you cannot get yourself up off the floor, big burpees. You don't have to jump, but you can slowly go up to the ceiling, go down, put your feet behind you. Every female should be able to get yourself off the floor. Planking, there is options kind of like this. You also need to be doing this often to really make those changes to your body mass. You need to be doing this 2 to 3 times a week. And you just need to find something that works for you. That traditional 2 to 3 sets of 10 might not work for the majority of the people. With different weights, different exercises, you need to play with this. But the idea is maybe you can do 3 sets of 5. Somebody can do 3 sets of 7. It's so individual, but you should be fatiguing and you should be wanting to drop that weight. And there is also quite a bit need to mix it up. Again, muscles will get quite a bit quick. The muscle memory, what works the first week is not going to work week 8. So you need to mix it up. Try to find new exercises. Come talk to us. Please has a great arsenal of exercises. And the memory, mood, and mojo. So huge, huge effect on the central nervous system being in a menopause, where if we have estrogen, we have kind of that good relationship with the good chemicals in our brain. So dopamine and serotonin are our kind of the happy guys. And at the same time, estrogen is helping us to kind of block that, or going into that fight or flight mood. So now we don't have the estrogen. We are not going to be as good uh, getting enough of the dopamine and serotonin. And again, anytime there is a drop, it puts you and makes you so vulnerable for anxiety, depression, brain fog. That goes together with the memory, and all of those changes basically affect your mojo, meaning that, you know, with the mental changes and with the physical changes happening in your reproductive system, uh, definitely the big change that everybody complains, it's vaginal dryness. If there is no estrogen, there will not be a vaginal moisture. The estrogen is responsible for the vaginal lining, the moisturizer. So I know quite a bit as a physiotherapy. I tell women that there are over-the-counter vaginal moisturizers. You can go and try it. You don't need to talk to anybody. The two most common one are the Replens and Repagyne. All they use is a protein in the gel, which is called the hyaluronic acid, and it's very common to our body. So there really should be barely any side effects. And the only thing that I found that could help our central system and fight through the brain fog and through possibly the anxiety is just as a supplement more protein and more it's called the BCAA, so brain chain amino acids. So yeah, that is, I think, oh my God.
Yeah. Can you we'll stop sharing your screen?
Yes. Okay.
Oh, there we go. All right. Thanks, Lucia. You just took us through the lifetime of the female.
I know. Sorry.
And we both seem to be sharing a hoarseness.
Sorry.
Okay, any questions? We'll take one or two. See what we have here. Can you cycle in and out of perimenopause?
Yes, absolutely. You can totally cycle in and out. You can basically have 1 year to 2 months of feeling these changes, and then your estrogen and progesterone kind of go back up there and get you through a couple of years of menopause. So absolutely, that's why the perimenopause would be, that this would be your perimenopause, where all these changes can be happening. You might be so good sometimes, and sometimes you might be completely not recognizing the response of your body.
Great. Okay. All right. We'll move quickly on, and if there's any questions at the end, we can tip back. But that certainly shows why we needed to have a female-centric talk tonight. So much information there. All right. So next is Melissa, who's a running coach, and her company is We Run the World, and she's an excellent athlete on her own right. And I think she's involved in a number of different sports. She also has a background in finance and accounting, and she's going to talk to us a bit about motivation, particularly through these winter months. So Melissa.
All right, I'll share my screen here. There we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
My slide, perfect. So I started my presentation with, when you asked me, Louise, to participate, 10 ways to stay active, but I thought not everyone is already active to begin with, and I thought 10 ways to stay or get active. I think now, as a coach, I've seen just how important physical activity is for people, and I know it's December, and it's cold out, and it's snowing sometimes. It's easy to say, oh, I'll start January 1st. But when we're constantly pushing it off, we're actually just really pushing off our mental health and our physical well-being. And there's no better time to start being active than the present. And so I'll kind of, allude to some of the reasons why I think a lot of people start too big and then it kind of scares them away. But anyway, so that's a bit of a side note. So we'll start here with 10 ways to stay active or get active. Number one, set goals. And I know I speak as a running coach, but you can, put this onto anybody who, whether your activity is yoga or whether it's cycling or hiking, whatever it might be, set a goal for yourself. And I know we don't have races currently, and I know yoga studios right now aren't able to meet indoors, but by having a goal, it gives you purpose and focus. It helps overcome procrastination, and at the end of the day, it helps motivate you. As a runner, I find, especially right now, I actually don't have a time goal or a race goal. I've got a mileage goal that I've set for myself, just to keep myself accountable and getting out the door each day, versus actually hitting a pace target or a workout. You know, so that's, try not to worry about your pace when you're out there if you're a runner, or you know, perfecting what art it is that you do. Number two, I say stay consistent. And if there's any of my athletes on here, they'll laugh because I think I'm like the Jiminy Cricket on their shoulder, always saying, stay consistent, because it's the number one thing to stay, you know, active and accountable to a plan. So by consistency, I recognize that not everyone right now, gyms are closed. It's making it difficult, or I guess they're not closed as of today, but you know, we don't have access to the same facilities we did. Maybe you don't have a treadmill, and in -30, you don't want to get out the door. Understandable. By being consistent, it might be that you put something in place of what you normally would run, or if you normally would practice yoga, you know, just keep it, keep consistent. That's the number one thing I can say. Number three, I said, join a fitness challenge. Now, these have been interesting. With my running group, March 15th, I remember well because it was my birthday, when everything shut down for the first time, we instantly developed a quarantine, that we called it. And to this day, I've got some of my clients requesting it. It was a daily core activity that we were all very accountable to. There's many fitness challenges, and they're not daunting. They don't have to be. You could join. You could do an online one. I know Strides, local, our running store, they do the mile a day. You don't have to be an elite runner to do this. You can walk a mile. You can jog a mile. There's many fitness challenges out there, and it just kind of keeps you motivated to get out the door. And often you may find you do more than a mile once you've actually gotten yourself out the door. Another one, engage someone for accountability. Now, this is often why people get a coach. Not everyone has the resources to get a coach, but we all do have access to either a friend, a colleague, somebody else that's looking to be motivated as well, or a spouse. And you know what? It's a great way to spend some time with your partner. If you know, hold them accountable to you hold each other accountable to your challenge, or your fitness goals, or just staying active throughout the winter months. Number five, I said, try something new. I think I say this from experience, because for one, I got injured about 4 years ago by running into my granite countertop and hurting my hip very badly. And that's when I took up cycling. And after cycling, I went on to do duathlon and compete nationally. It was an introduction to try something new that I ended up really loving. And so use this time to stay motivated to try something new. Maybe you wanted to take a cross-country ski lesson and you've never done that before. Maybe you want to go skating down in Eau Claire, or maybe there's so many different things that you can do. And I honestly say, keep it fresh, and that will motivate you to stay active. Most of us aren't on a strict training plan right now, especially with, you know, a lot of unknowns in the future. So do give yourself some leeway you don't have to run every day or practice yoga every day. Get out and do something fresh, physically, mentally. It'll benefit you in more ways than one. Number six, plan ahead. This is a big one, because if you're just kind of leaving it to the wind on what you're going to do when you wake up that day, you're probably going to choose Netflix and chill when you look outside and it's snowing and it's -30. So I always say plan ahead. You know, I also want to say, don't ever just Netflix and chill. But I do think if you care about your physical well-being, definitely make room for that in your day, whether it be carving out a certain time every day or just committing to 30 minutes a day. Plan ahead for that, because something will come up where that takes priority unless you really plan for that. I know with my husband, for example, his head office is located in a different time zone. So, and they always want to put his meetings over his lunch hour, where that's his scheduled time to run. And so he'll block it off, and it's kind of, unless it's pretty urgent, that's his time to do something physical. Number 7, I kind of alluded to this in the beginning, don't bite off more than you can chew, especially if you're new to activity. Don't go so big that it ends up really discouraging you. You don't want to find yourself injured as you get into a new routine and then really discouraged and not want to pick it up again. I think that's really key. But even, non-novice athletes or active people, this is not a time to put a lot of pressure on yourself to do bigger, grander things. I think we all saw that in the summer. There was a lot of people doing these extreme things, but eventually that will catch up to you. You'll fatigue. It's not, I would recommend, it's not the time to do that, especially during the cold winter months when we don't really, especially in Calgary, know what we're going to get the next day weather-wise sometimes. And so you don't want to feel like you failed just because, you set a goal that you just never, it was a little bit unattainable to begin with. Another one, get outside. And this one I cannot stress enough. I think the nature fix that, you can get from going outside is bigger than anything. Now, I don't know if any of you have read The Nature Fix, actually, is the name of the book by Florence Williams. My husband read it and it was so interesting that he just kept sharing it with me. And the author shares a story about this park in Japan that takes your blood pressure before you enter this nature park and upon leaving. And consistently, people's blood pressure is lower upon leaving, and they actually have a term for it. It's called forest bathing. And I mean, you hear it all the time. I hear it with my runners. They just got to get out to the trails, or they just have to get out in nature. There's science has proven it really can lift one's spirits when they actually are just out being in nature. So take as much opportunity as you can. And this is a good time to try something new. For example, I think, if you want to go snowshoeing, but it's really cold out, there's a lot of trails that are covered in trees that you're actually covered from the snow and the cold wind, and you may find enjoyment that you can try something new on a day that's a little bit too cold to go run on the pathways in Calgary. The next one, reflect and journal. Now this one might sound silly, but I have seen it in my own athletes about, anytime you do something, write a quick note. How did it go? How did you feel? And I have them do it for themselves and myself as well, so I can see that. But I often will have them look back on notes that they've written to remind themselves when they're feeling negative, when they're feeling down, or they didn't want to go for a run and they did, and they've put that note, oh, I'm so glad I went out. I feel so much better. It's really good to reflect after a run and just write a quick note or after your activity, and you'll remind yourself when you do need that little added motivation to do something that, you know what, I remember that day I was feeling terrible, but as soon as I got out and did what I needed to do, I was a whole different person. I had an experience like that about 2 days ago where we have a new puppy, so it's been very low on sleep lately, but I really didn't want to do anything. It was about till 8 at night I kept pushing off, and finally when I did, I felt like a new person. So I can attest to that. And lastly, I said reward yourself, but I would also add in there, and I think we're talking to women, so mostly today, and this is a big female trait that I see, especially my athletes. I coach about 2/3 females, 1/3 male. Don't punish yourself. We often will do things as a form of punishment, or we'll be mad at ourselves because we didn't do something. Reward yourself for what you did do. Because when you look back, I know I use Training Peaks. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but it'll give you a red box if you don't complete a workout. And you don't know how often I hear from the women that if they even see one red box in their week, they think they failed. Yet what I want to remind them of is, but look at all the green boxes. You did 95% of what you set out to do that week. That's not a fail. In fact, that's like an A+, I think, in terms of grades. So I think it's really good to, when we are, especially during COVID times right now, especially living in Calgary in the cold winter months, do these other things I've mentioned, but don't punish yourself if one day goes sideways. Do reward yourself to get through, whatever that might be. Maybe you're going to do a month of a quarantine, or you're going to do a month of yoga, or you're going to try something new, and then, you're going to buy yourself a Lululemon. I mean, whatever it is that it works for you. I know we're all motivated differently, but I would say definitely reward yourself. So as a coach, those are the things, especially with my females. I mean, this obviously applies to males too, but those would be the 10 top ones. And obviously these are going to, I'm not saying you need to do all 10 of these things to stay motivated and to stay active. Some are going to appeal to different people, but these are the things I've seen in my athletes, and as an athlete myself, these are the things that I think are of key importance for being active.
All right, great. Thanks, Melissa. That's such great information. I mean, it's really important to think of that novelty piece, I think, because we all often do get into our routines, and just doing something new can make such a difference. And I love that idea of getting out into the nature and seeing that winter wonderland, because it just inspires us. So does anyone have any questions to add in the chat about getting outside and running? I had a question that I'll just chip in there about the footing and shoe wear you might recommend. Monica talked a bit about that last week, but just wondering about any tips from you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question I get almost daily as soon as winter comes around. So everyone's shoe preference is obviously going to be very different. So I won't recommend a shoe per se, but there are those little crampons that you can get. They're $10 at, say, Costco or your local running stores. You can get them for quite cheap. They work really well. I don't ever recommend running on ice. I mean, honestly, I've heard of way too many of my friends or people that know people that have fallen and gotten concussions. It's a real risk in our in Calgary. So if it is a day like that, that's a great day to try something new, or switch your schedule around a little bit if you need to.
Yeah, and I like the rewarding ourselves too, so we can go out and buy something maybe. You know, Christmas shopping, one for you, one for me.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much, Melissa.
No problem.
So next we'll go to Kristy, and thanks for joining us again. She came into the first one and gave us some information about herbs for immune system, and I'm sure she'll have some comments a little bit maybe on the sleep piece again that Lucia had mentioned. But Kristy has a background in environmental biology, and she likes to combine, or does combine, the scientific and holistic approaches to a healthy life experience. So she's going to talk to us a bit more about bringing peace to our minds and teaching us how to be mindful. So Kristy.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what I do. I actually work with natural herbal remedies and mindset awareness, and I combine those and create customized plans for my clients. But there's always the 4 pillars involved when you're working with me as a herbalist. And so that's the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, and the physical side of things. And when one is out of balance, it can tip the scales in other areas of your being. So I always like to think of balance as a fluctuating thing, because it's not a teeter-totter where everything is always level. And when our mental health and our awareness about our mental health is getting a little bit uncomfortable, then we know that everything else might cascade down and waterfall down. So the key to really being mindful and making sure that you're always kind of aware of where you are in your mental state is to be really present and to be really honest. So, you know, not every day is a great day, but how many bad days in a row do you have, right? Is it linked to the cycle that Lucia has kind of brought up tonight, which was great? Is it linked to the fact that you are indoors and you're not being able to run with your running group? So being really, really present with yourself and honest is the first step. And the second is to identify 3 different categories in your life. So that is physical activity place, the connection piece, and then what I call reset moments. So if you take each of those categories, and we'll start with physical activity, exercise releases endorphins. Endorphins are your painkillers, basically. So when I have my clients come in and all they are doing is exercising, I'm often trying to find the connection as to why they're doing that. Because if they're doing that because you're stiff and you just feel like you can't get going unless you exercise, you might be looking for endorphins. Well, if you have an injury and the endorphins can't be released through exercise, there has to be another way. And that might be through dark chocolate, something spicy, laughing releases endorphins, sex releases endorphins. But exercise also releases serotonin. And so that's your mood enhancer. So swimming, cycling, walking in nature, is just a walk will release that serotonin. Running. So if somebody is wanting that mood stabilizer, so that's what I need. I'm a 30-minute a day. Louise has been great with me. She's always kind of just dropping in a little hint that I should probably do some weight. So I am, but I like the walking. I like that serotonin release more than I like that endorphin release. So it's important for you to know, what do you want out of your physical activities other than your physicality? What are you looking for? Are you looking to stabilize your mood, or are you looking to release endorphins? So those are options. The second category I mentioned was connection. And this connection piece, in the first series, I talked about this spiritual connection, because connecting to something bigger than us often helps us with our mental health. It's challenging at times to connect with other humans. If there's trauma in our past, if we've had bad relationships, if there's been something that's been kind of a glitch, it's kind of hard to connect again later. So if you're in that space, connect to something bigger than you, and that will lead you to a connection that happens with people. So connect to nature, connect to music, connect to cooking, and then you can get that person-to-person connection, which is important because of the oxytocin, which Lucia talked about. That oxytocin is called the love hormone. Before, I would give presentations about hugging people, and the idea is, if you hug someone for 30 seconds, which is a really long and uncomfortable and awkward hug. Try it on anyone. About 10 seconds in, everybody gets really uncomfortable. But that's the amount of time it takes to really start releasing that oxytocin. So if you are in a relationship, or if you're in the same household and you're feeling like you need to cuddle, actually go ahead and cuddle. This gives you permission to cuddle instead of getting out of bed and unloading the dishwasher, or doing your next task, or running out somewhere else. You need that. It releases a hormone. So hugs, touch. Okay, so maybe you aren't in a partnership right now. Maybe you're living alone. That's okay. If you feel comfortable, you can go and get a massage. Your pedicure is still touch, as long as things are still open. Pets are huge. We were just talking about that before the call. Pets release oxytocin when you touch them. You release oxytocin. I don't know what happens to the pet. The pet might be like, get away from me, I need a break. But you release oxytocin as you're engaging with your pets. So that's a great option. Okay, I know that this is a difficult time and it's strange and connection is hard, the human-to-human connection, but acts of service release oxytocin, and so do compliments. So, that person that's always complimenting everybody and they always seem happy, it's because they're actually releasing a chemical. Laughing kills two birds with one stone. So if you can laugh, you're releasing the endorphins and you're connecting with someone else, so all the better. As I said earlier, the third category is what I call these reset moments. These are active, short bites, or they can be longer bites of time. So one of the things that I often tell my clients to do is go to the bathroom and run your hands under warm water. That is a quick reset moment. Water is very, very comforting. It is, many of us float in water. It's very supportive. It helps with your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. It just relaxes everything, and you can leave any situation you're in to go to the bathroom, or at least you should be able to go to the bathroom and have some private time. And now with all the hand washing, it gives you even a longer reset moment. Breathing, just right now, just take a moment to notice how you're breathing. Are you breathing in a shallow way? Are you breathing deeply through your nose, out your mouth? How is that going on in your body? So whenever you are feeling that state of confusion or frustration, take a moment to breathe, because you might find that just a quick reset of your breath will change everything. It changes all the oxygen levels in your body, so it has to change your mental state. Okay, a bit of a longer one is a body scan. So if everybody wants to try this, what you're going to do is at the top of your head, you're going to start there, the crown of your head, and you're just going to scan in your mind's eye. How are you feeling from the top of your head down past your eyes and your upper ears, your jaw? What's happening with your shoulders? Are you holding your body in a strained position? Does your lower back feel tight? You know, we get stuck in our postures sometimes. So, you know, just reassess. You scan everything down to your bottoms of the soles of your feet. How do they feel? What's talking to you? What isn't? What's being kind of lazy and what's overworking? You just have to shift. So that body scan, you can do that at any point in any day. I call this technique the fish face. I guess there's probably a proper term, but it's an active release technique. And what you do is on the side of your jaw, right kind of in line with your earlobe, if you just rub that area and just notice if it's tense or not, if one side feels tighter than the other. And then what you're going to do is you're going to find there's a soft spot underneath your chin, not your bone. There's a soft palate spot. And you're going to make a fish face and press up on that soft spot. And just breathe in with that fish face and pressing up a few times, and notice if your shoulders drop. And then release that fish face and rub that area a second time. Did anything shift? Did one side feel less tight or more tight? That's one of those really quick active release reset moments that kind of remind your body that there's something else going on than whatever you're doing. So that really helps reset your mental state as well. And then everybody's been talking about being in nature and why it's so great. And it really is, because it actually releases dopamine. Sun exposure releases dopamine, and that is the reward chemical, for lack of a better term. So the positive way to get that reward is going outside, walking in nature, being in nature. There is a chemical response that happens. And so even in those dark days when you just don't want to get out of bed, if there is something that gets said here that triggers you to say, oh no, this is a chemistry issue. This isn't, like Melissa had alluded to and Lucia, this isn't a me issue. This is a chemical issue. If that is what motivates you to get out of bed, then do it, because it just builds on itself. The other thing that is released is that dopamine releases is doing self-care techniques, celebrating, rewarding yourself. Those little wins are key. And then lastly, meditation. And so if everyone could have a moment and put in the chat whether they meditate regularly or if they're new to meditation, that would help me understand where to go. Because I don't believe that meditation is something that we can do perfectly. It is a practice. It's like yoga. It's a practice you build into meditation. So if you're not a great meditator, you have to trick your brain to get into a meditative state. So I recommend to a lot of my clients puzzles. If you're into puzzles, then you can zone out with puzzles. Music, walking, because there's a rhythm about it. When you're walking, you get really meditative. And the other way for me is painting. There's not a thought in my head when I paint. So if you're new to meditation, start off there. Do these small things to trick yourself to get into that knit. It's going to sound odd, but shell peanuts, shell walnuts when you're talking to somebody. You know, have you ever been in a situation where you're like, I wish this would end? Maybe you're thinking that now. I'm almost done. Find something to do with your hands so that you can get into the meditation. And then the next step after that is you go to a visualization, and then you go to a guided visualization, guided or unguided. Maybe you can do it on your own. That's a practice. And then you go to a guided and then an unguided meditation. So empower yourself to do what's right for you. And like Melissa said, you don't have to set these crazy goals. You know, you're not going to sit for 4 hours meditating if you've only done it one time tonight. So this is all about empowering yourself and doing what is right for you, because that actually really does help your mental health. Those quick wins, empowerment, and being fully aware of where you sit in this present moment are all intricate and keys for success. So Louise, that was what I have for tonight in terms of mental awareness.
That's fantastic. Yeah, those are so many great points, and hopefully you're still willing to stay on after we end the recording and go through a visualization and introduce some of us to a bit more meditation. It was great to mention that connecting to something bigger than ourselves is such an important thing, whether it's connecting with a charity or getting together with a group online like this. Even is just kind of something bigger than ourselves. And interesting that the reset moments often link something very physical to something mental. That when you're walking, that rhythm, so something very physical can really just get our head in a different space. I like the idea about puzzles. So I don't know if anyone has any questions they want to add into the chat, or even from the presenters, if you have any questions related to or anything you want to ask one of the other presenters. But, yeah, so I think that's, yeah, Lucia, or maybe we'll just kind of go back to start back with Lucia if you have any sort of final thoughts based on any of the comments you had. Oh, Kristy just had, well, backtrack, is that Kristy, do you have any books on getting into meditation that you'd recommend?
You know, I think it's so individualized. I would say if you're new to meditation, then I would definitely start with apps. Like, go crazy on visualizations and look up visualizations and go with whoever doesn't annoy you, if that makes any sense. Like the voice, the cadence, because that will kill you. But if you want like proper true meditation books, I can let me look into it, because I frankly am not a great meditator. So I don't go to full meditation. I trick my brain and I do visualizations. So for me, a full book on meditation would cause me anxiety. So I can look though. Let me get back to you.
Great. I know from Dr. Alana Taub's talk on a couple of weeks ago, she mentioned a few apps for sleeping, and Headspace was one. And
That's right.
I've tried that one, and it really is kind of a good beginner approach to meditation that really does get your head in different space. So that's one I've had experience with. Yeah. Okay, Lucia, any kind of final thoughts?
No, I think that was a full circle. I loved it how Kristy finished it. And yeah, it's just connecting, and it's not about running, it's maybe about the baking. And I'm glad that all of that was mentioned, because just find something, I think, at the end of the day that makes you happy, and connect with a friend, because there is always a friend for you that you can talk to.
Great. And Melissa, anything you want to chip in? Final thought?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to the other presenters. So many good tidbits. I can't wait to share with my clients.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you guys for speaking, because I think there's a lot of great information in there. I'm going to have to review the video again when I have a chance. So thank you, Lucia, Melissa, and Kristy. Your tips will, I hope, make winter a little bit easier for all of us at some point. I also want to thank Nadine Walker, who's been working in the back or behind the scenes with creating the posters and sending out the links. So thank you, Nadine, for doing that. And also our other presenters from the other nights, Dr. Alana Taube, Anne-Marie Vinecourt, and Monica Ambrositis. Thank you guys for giving such great information that will, again, hopefully see us through the winter. So yeah, staying connected and looking out for one another, I think that will be the key this winter. And so bring on the Zoom holiday cheer and a fun outdoor activity. Take some time for yourself. And stay well, keep warm, remember to exhale, remember the breathing, keep the hope going, and have a great evening. So I'm going to stop the recording here, but please stay if you want to experience some visualization and a bit of meditation. Okay, Kristy?
Sure. Okay.
We have a few people still with us. So
yeah, so the one thing that I'd just like to put some, boundaries around is that it's going to be about 10 minutes. So you're free to leave it